Tell me whenever you're ready.
I am ready when you are. You
Welcome
don't have your
back,
headphones on. Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Matt.
And this is Publish and Prosper,
Where publishing, e-commerce, and marketing collide. Welcome back to another episode of Publish and Prosper, where Lauren just gave you a clue about what we're going to be talking about. Unless she edited it out, then she didn't give you a clue.
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, all right. This is episode number 46.
Yes, it is.
And today we're going to be talking about how content entrepreneurs can maximize their ROI on in-person events.
Yes, we are.
We love in-person events,
We
right?
really do.
We own an in-person event.
We own an in-person event.
But we love them anyways.
We go to several.
That's right.
At the time that we are recording this, I am just coming. This is my first day back in the office from being at an in-person event. And at the time this episode comes out, we will be getting ready to leave to go to another in-person event. So clearly we are big fans of them. We go quite often.
When this episode comes out, what event are we going to?
Author Nation.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
This comes out the Wednesday before we leave for Vegas.
Yeah. You're just flexing all over the place.
I really am.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to know that I'm going to Vegas for a week.
I don't feel like Vegas is a flex.
I mean, not really to me either.
No. In fact, I absolutely hate Vegas. If it wasn't for that show, I wouldn't go. I know. Except for now they also do F1 racing in Vegas, which is right after Author Nation. And I wish I could stay for the week after and watch F1 racing. That would actually be a bucket list thing for me. So maybe 1 year. If they keep doing Author Nation in Vegas, maybe 1 year I'll stay after and watch F1.
Okay, that's fair.
Otherwise, I hate Vegas.
I was actually just in Vegas. And
you went to Emo Fest 2024?
And it was great.
Oh,
it was so good. Yes, I did go to Emo Fest 2024.
That's not what it's really called.
No, it's called When We Were Young. But yeah, the co-headliners were Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance. So it was definitely just Emo Fest 2024. But I actually texted my best friend while I was walking around Vegas. And I was like, in case I had just ever needed the confirmation that my brain is really and truly broken, I'm walking around this city that is like everyone's favorite adult playground, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just walking around going, God, I wish this was Disney.
Yeah, I can't stand Vegas. Although they have an In-N-Out there, so that helps.
They do, and I didn't go, and I intended to, but it's fine. It's okay.
Man, you were really blowing it.
I know.
Too many tears. You couldn't see where you were walking. Is that what it was? Hey, what do your bracelets say today before we jump into this episode?
That's a great question. Also, you didn't ask me in the last episode.
Shut up.
You didn't.
Yes, I did.
You did not. It's okay. They say born in 1989, You'll Be Fine, and Right Through Me, which are all Taylor Swift song lyrics and or references.
I didn't ask you in the last. Wait, Right Through You?
Yeah.
Right, like right? W-R-I-T-E?
Like They See Right Through Me.
Oh.
Yeah. It's from a song called The Archer. It's a great song.
Okay. So the last episode, I didn't ask you about your bracelets?
Yeah.
I don't believe that. What was the last episode?
Is that it was the AMA episode. So the episode where questions were the topic of the episode you didn't ask. And I didn't notice it either until I was editing the episode. And I was like, oh, should I put it in the show notes?
Why didn't you help me out? And just let me ask the question and you could edit, weave it in.
Because we can't add it into the video.
Man, that's cold-blooded. All right. How content entrepreneurs can maximize their ROI on in-person events. Yeah. Basically,
if you didn't get this from our extreme immediate tangent in this intro here, we do love in-person events, like we said, and we think they're very valuable to authors, entrepreneurs, anybody. We've done episodes in the past. We've done at least 2 other episodes talking about different elements of attending events.
Yeah.
Whether you're attending it as an attendee or attending it as an exhibiting author or whatever it is. But I don't know, maybe this is an attempt to further convince you that it's worth it. It's worth your time. It's worth the effort. And here's what you can do to make sure that you are getting the most out of the time and expense that you're putting into it.
Yeah, I think that latter part, I would say more. At this point, trying to convince somebody to go to an in-person event is probably pointless. But, for those that do enjoy going like we do, or, are considering it, these are some ways that you can try to extract some ROI. Because, most of them are not cheap these days, and not everybody has the luxury of working for a company or brand that will send them to some of these events, especially some of the marketing ones or business events or things like that. But
thanks, Matt.
Extracting ROI out of that, especially if you're paying out of your own pocket for your event ticket, for your flights, for your hotel, for your meals, it is important that you're able to get some, if not all, and then some of your money back on what you spend. So we're very cognizant of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's get into it.
Well, this first one is like a bit sort of, for me, it's one of the most important ones because we're going to talk about taking notes at an event, and I'm literally the worst note taker on the planet. If it weren't for several people on my team that go to events with me, I wouldn't have notes from most of the events we go to. So we're going to talk about notes and how you take them and what you do with them. But I think, up front, it's really important to note that it might not be at the top of your head when you sit down into one of the sessions that you've decided you want to sit on. For others, that's the only thing they're thinking about. Their notepad is out, or their laptop or whatever, and they're ready to start. Sometimes you just get in there and you just kind of feel like you just want to listen and go with the flow, but you really should try to take down some sort of notes any way that you can. And we're going to talk about some ways to make it a lot easier for you to do that, especially if you're like me, where you're just terrible at it, so you don't even bother. And you hope that, all of the main points that are valuable will stick in your brain until you get home, and they usually don't.
How does that work out for you?
It doesn't at all. I might remember like one thing, and then that's like the one thing that I'll post on social media when I'm at the event, and then I got to wait till we get back, and I get your notes and Lolly's notes and Haley's notes and everybody else's.
Yeah, I feel like that's famous last words right there. Is I'm not going to write this down because I'm going to remember it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but now I have a new way to take notes.
Oh yeah, what's that?
So I use an AI note-taking tool.
Oh.
Yeah. It's called Otter.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's lots of them. You don't have to use that one. But that's just the one I started using. I think, where did I find out about Otter? Katie Brinkley. Oh. Katie Brinkley uses Otter. And I was on a video call with her one time as we were working through publishing her book, which everybody should go get, right?
Absolutely. We linked it in the show notes before, for sure.
Anyways, so we were on a call, and I saw this thing pop up, like somebody wanted to log into the video call, and it said Katie Brinkley's note taker, and it was this little otter. And I was like, what is that? And she told me about it. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I knew there were AI note-taking tools out there, but when she talked about that one and what it could do, I was like, man, this is great. I immediately signed up for it, and I've been using it. It's great. So if you're going to an event or events, or you're a regular at events, and you're terrible at taking notes, and you don't have the luxury or privilege that I do of having coworkers who are great at taking notes, then you can do this other thing, which is get yourself an AI note taker. They're not expensive at all, and they're great.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether or not it makes it into the final cut of this episode, you may have already heard this, but that's something that I've seen people using Ecamm as well, which is also what we're using now to record this episode.
Right.
This is brand new. This is our first time using Ecamm, so I can't really speak to how specifically they were using Ecamm during a session, but like I was very impressed sitting next to somebody at the end of the session. It was Caleb Dempsey, I believe, at the end of a session at CEX last year, and just like seeing the output of like transcript and notes and audio and like summaries, and they turned to me and they were like, hey, do you it was Robbie Fitzwater's session, somebody that we work with professionally. So like, and we were all kind of engaging with Robbie during the session. So Caleb turned to me at the end and was like, hey, you seem to know him. Like, do you want these do you think he would want these?
No, we just do that to everybody.
Like, no, we just heckle all the
Just know
all
if
the
you get up on a
speakers.
stage at a session to talk and there's a bunch of Lulu people in the crowd, you're going to get heckled.
Yeah, for sure.
Nah, just kidding.
No, absolutely not.
You're going to be really well supported.
Yes.
And zoom back out here for a minute. This is what I truly believe, and we've said this before, what people should be using AI for.
Yes.
Making your life easier. As we primarily talk to authors and creators most of the time, there's still this big fear that AI is going to take their job as it pertains to writing content or creating, graphic content, things like that. And of course, AI can do that stuff, but we should be using it, and we should be using it for things like this to make your life easier. And again, that's ROI returned already. If you spent, let's say the ticket price to an event was, $700, which is not uncommon. In many cases, it's often more. But anyways, you get back and you've got, a laptop full of notes from 10 different sessions and, a bunch of other things that were taken for you with an AI note taker tool, where you can then turn around and have the tool itself summarize every one of those transcripts. And, like in the case of Otter, what I use, and most of them probably, you can literally tell it to not only summarize those notes for you, but hey, like, tell me what the top 5, highlights of that session were. I mean, it basically does all the work for you so that you can come home and really focus in on what was important.
That's always something that I think would be really helpful, especially for sessions like these where, people are moving so fast through these sessions. This is actually what I was doing before we were recording this episode, was trying to go through my notes from Content Marketing World and make them like coherent enough that I could share them with the rest of the team. And there are a lot of things in there that I'm seeing that I'm like, okay, first of all, a half finished thought where I didn't clearly the speaker moved on to the next slide and I didn't finish typing out what was on the slide or whatever. I was typing so fast that it just straight gibberish came out and I can't even tell what I was trying to say or, whatever it is. And I'm really looking back at some of these things and going like, oh, man, I really wish I had some kind of transcript of the session. Or, a lot of times the speakers at these sessions will say, sometimes at the beginning of session, sometimes at the end of the session, like, hey, if you want this deck, I'm happy to share it with you. Here's a QR code to scan it and download it directly, or sign up for my newsletter. And the next email that goes out is going to have all of my the downloadable deck and all of my notes from this session. Add me on LinkedIn and I'll send it to you directly on there. So it's, it's a great networking opportunity for them and for you. But it's also a good way to kind of get these resources from people. And I do always try to go back through that and add those into my notes.
Yeah.
So that I have those linked in there so that I can go back and look and say oh, I went to a session at Content Marketing World last week. That was AJ Wilcox. Yep. Doing LinkedIn ads, who's wonderful. If you have any reason to, if you're interested in paid LinkedIn ads at any point, AJ is just such an engaging and charismatic speaker that he makes me excited about something that I can't stand. I don't actually want anything to do with LinkedIn ads, but his sessions are so he has such energy while talking about it that it makes me feel oh, maybe I don't hate this. I can actually do. But I had been to a session at a different conference a year or two ago that he did on LinkedIn ads. And I immediately just went back through my notes, went into my Google Drive, searched his name, pulled up the notes from the last session and linked those into my notes for this session. So now I've got a little thread of different AJ Wilcox LinkedIn ads wisdom.
Yeah. I highlighted a lot of what you just said in bright green in our outline here because I love that. And I often forget to do that. Get the slide decks from the speakers and then link it in my notes or in the notes. But I can tell you as somebody who's been to a lot of conferences and also somebody who speaks at conferences, most speakers have zero problems giving you their slide deck or a version of the slide deck that they're comfortable with being out there in the public. Most of the time these days, they'll proactively say, hey, if you want this slide deck, just scan this QR code at the end and I'll send it to you. Or I've been to a few events where they actually provide all the slide decks. If I think some events are still not really doing that yet. It requires a lot of organization and planning, but nonetheless, most speakers, even if they don't proactively say like, hey, if you want a copy of my deck, just do this. At the end of the session, most of the time, if you ask them, they're happy to give you a copy of the deck and trade for your email address or some other information or something like that. So I think that is super valuable. So you combine the speaker slide deck with, some well-crafted notes. And I mean, again, you're just stacking the value already, the return on that investment. Yep. If you think about what you could come away from an event with in terms of notes and speaker decks, and let's just say, out of all the sessions there, you found value in 5 of them, right? If each of those 5 were an online course that you were going to pay to take, they would easily out total the amount of money you spent at that event.
Oh, yeah.
So just coming back with really well-crafted notes, some speaker decks, and some other things, you're already really close to getting some ROI back on that event that you paid to go to. So I love that idea, and I think that's stuff, again, that you can use throughout the rest of the year to help guide your career path or your content creation path or whatever it is that you're working on.
Absolutely. One of the things that I always like to do at conferences is make notes to myself about things I want to remember for future conferences.
Yeah.
So if I see somebody using a really cool tablet, it's Remarkable, I think. Have you ever heard of this tablet?
Yes.
Looks really cool. I saw someone using one at a conference recently and was like, I have a lot of questions about that. Or even just like, oh man, like I totally didn't think about bringing like a hotspot or setting up my phone as a hotspot ahead of this conference. I thought I was going to be able to rely on the Wi-Fi and it's not working out.
That conference center, by the way, is notorious for the worst Wi-Fi. The one in San Diego,
which is insane considering it's literally where the biggest Comic-Con in the world is, and also like a bunch of other like San Diego Convention Center is famous.
It must just be that either to have the good Wi-Fi at your event costs so much money that it's prohibitive.
Yeah,
it's a barrier, or it's just garbage. Period. Because we've been to other events there and all commented like, how is this even possible?
Yes.
Like, so I have a feeling that, the good Wi-Fi is just too pricey. So most events are just, give them the free Wi-Fi, which is garbage.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
That's wild.
Oh, well, just, things to keep in mind. Maybe set your tools up ahead of time and, keep in mind things that you're going to want to remember for future events.
Yeah, that's a good point too, though. Like, again, side note, sorry. With Google Docs, you can set it to work offline.
Yes.
So that's probably something to think about too. I don't know what the options are, like if you're using a note taker tool like I do. I don't know if there's a work offline option because, it doesn't live natively on my laptop. It's cloud-based. So that might be something to think about, actually. Yeah. Although, again, it's accessing the microphone on my laptop, so it might still be able to record and transcribe after the fact. If you lost internet, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. But I'd still say, try where possible to use a note-taking tool if you're not a pro at it like Lauren and some of these other people and that woman that was looking over her shoulder.
I'm sure she got great notes. And by that, I mean for me, because she didn't take any herself. So it's fine.
All right, so what do we do with these notes?
It's a great question. So I don't know. Is this gonna be the thing that you're gonna argue is the higher value than what you learn? I don't know. Let's find out. Having all these notes are great. Things that you learn are great, except that you then have to do things with them. Learning a bunch of new practices and learning a bunch of like tips and strategies, and here are the trends in the industry, and here's how we did this, and here's how we did that is all, it's great. It's great. But if you don't actually implement any of those things that you learned, then what did you learn?
Then you just wasted your boss's money if this was a company trip. That's what you did.
Yep.
No, I think that's the point, right? Of taking really good notes, whatever it is that you're doing, turning those into actionable items, right? and like I think you said this earlier, when you are taking notes, highlighting those things that you think later on should be some of those things that you're going to take action on. Or like you said too, you come back through and little notes to yourself for specific things that were said or pointed out in that session that you can turn into something actionable when you get back home, back to work, back to your home office, whatever it is that you do. The most important part about, these events, taking good notes, is again, how you turn that into actionable takeaways that are going to further, your business, your brand, your career, whatever it is you're trying to influence there. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to like recognize that if you're choosing these conferences correctly, if you are actually like attending ones that you've done the research and you can tell that they are like valuable resources, and the people that are speaking at them really are thought leaders in your industry and in your community, like they know what they're talking about and you should trust them. Like I think about this all the time. I went to Social Media Marketing World in March of 2020. It was the last thing I did before everything shut down. And I have session notes from that talk about how TikTok was going to change like the landscape of social media and marketing forever.
I think what we should talk about too, though, is when you're at these events and in these sessions, remaining really open to what you're hearing, what you're taking down as notes, and just trying to take everything in, because you actually don't know what could be useful to you until after the fact.
Yeah.
So you just brought up the TikTok example. At that time, March of 2020, yeah, TikTok was a thing, but it wasn't the thing yet. And so a lot of people, including myself, would hear something like that and be like, we'll wait and we'll see, or whatever, And then other people like you would hear that and go, I don't know, that was pretty compelling, and I highlighted it. I must have highlighted it for a reason. We really should look into this. You just don't know until after the fact. So, there are a lot of times where I look at somebody's notes from an event and I might skim through the first 2 paragraphs and get to just one little thing that sticks out at me. And I go back and talk to that person and they're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Or vice versa. I'll go through it and I'll pick something out, but then I'll talk to you or Lolly or somebody else, and they'll go, yeah, but what about this? And I'll go, I didn't even realize. Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense for sure. You just never know what you're going to find helpful or useful in your situation, especially in the moment, because you're just trying to take it all in. And then when you get home and you start sifting through this stuff, I think that's when some of it becomes a little more clear and readily apparent. So, again, remaining really open when you're in that experience to just taking it all in and not filtering things out in the moment, which I think is what a lot of people tend to do. I think when you're processing information that's coming in and you're writing it down or typing it, I think sometimes we have this tendency to pre-filter, like, that doesn't apply to me, I don't need that. But if you just take everything in, or again, if you're using a tool so you don't even have to worry about it, you can decide later, like, what's going to be impactful to your business, to your brand, to your, whatever it is you're doing, versus pre-filtering that stuff as you take it in, because you may end up doing yourself a disservice, and more than likely you will. So yeah, that was a really good point, I think, in a roundabout way, when you brought up the TikTok thing, that, again, I came away from that, or those notes, because I didn't go to Social Media Marketing World that year, with just like, yeah, TikTok, whatever, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, we were not interested in video at all at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, still though, you, to this day, that's one of the things you remember about those notes in that event is this whole TikTok thing. I mean, you just never know what's going to come out of it. So take everything in, then decide later.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier with the AJ Wilcox session that I went to, like, I still reference session notes from sessions that I went to at conferences years ago. And I'm doing that now. Sometimes I'm looking back at notes from sessions that I went to that were social media based, that I'm no longer the social media manager, but there were still things within there that I took notes on that I am thinking about now in a different capacity, that I'm like, I would love to go back and see what this I remember somebody talking about this, and I'd love to go back and like refresh my memory on what that take was.
Yeah, I've done that too inadvertently.
Yeah.
Years and years ago, I went to an SEO conference in New York. It was called C3. Conductor was the brand. I think they've since been acquired, but either way, they had an SEO conference, and there was a guy on stage, and he was using Star Wars themes in his deck. I have the picture somewhere. I won't search for it now, but I just remember that one slide in his deck. He was using some Star Wars references, and he was explaining a point related to SEO and content marketing. And I was just like, man, that's like, I get that. That really makes sense. And again, I'm terrible at taking notes, but I snapped a picture of that slide, and he also happened to be standing in front of that slide. And then I think I scribbled something in my notebook and then put C Star Wars picture, you know what I mean? So I would know later. And then after the fact, like, it was very helpful for me, the point this gentleman was trying to make. Well, fast forward to, a couple years ago, turns out that guy was Joe Polizzi.
I knew this was going to be, I knew it was going to be somebody, but that I didn't expect.
And I never connected the two until a good year into Joe and I becoming friends, and then, obviously doing business together. And it dawned on me, I was like, oh my God, wait a second. That was Joe Polizzi. And to this day, I would still use the concept that he was talking about. So I hit him up. I was like, hey, and I sent him that picture. I'm like, do you remember this? And he just kind of laughed, and it was just like, so stay open, because you never know what you're going to use after the fact. But like you said, and like I just talked about, there are times where you'll go back to that information years later, because there are some things that they'll just stand true through time. They're concepts that, they hold true regardless of the tech that's emerging or things like that. I mean, no matter what tech is coming out there, if you're in the world of marketing should be human-centric no matter what. And if it's not, you're losing out. So there's going to be concepts that are relative to that will stand true 5 years from now through the AI storm and everything else. And again, if you have great notes from one of these sessions, that's just a great library you're building that you can go back to again and again and again. So yeah, I love that point you made.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Also, I want to point out something that Matt said in there about taking pictures of slides during sessions and making notes in his notes to see those pictures. That's a great like time-saving little tip that I see people doing all the time. Or I also see people, if you're taking notes on your iPad, they'll just hold their iPad up, immediately snap the picture, and then go right back to taking notes. And I'm like, man,
yeah,
if only I wasn't using my iPad as a glorified e-reader.
Gross.
I know you'd hate it so much. It's okay.
A glorified romance e-reader.
I actually mostly use it for reading fan fiction, but I guess that's the same thing.
6 and 1/2 dozen in the other.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, no, I think and it's also, you really are creating this just like long-term repository of educational information and resources for yourself.
Which again is ROI on your spend. So, right now, not having gone to that event, if you needed some really good information for this next project you're working on, or next campaign you're creating, or some product that you're trying to develop and bring to market, things like that's less you have in your library of useful information, of helpful and impactful resources. But the more you can add to that library by bringing these things back from these conferences and these sessions that you sit in, you're just building that library, that ROI on your spend.
Yeah. That's also one of the things that I do for every session that I attend that I liked. So I don't do this for every session, because if sometimes you go to a session and it doesn't
It's
hit.
a dumpster fire.
And that's a nicer way of saying what I was trying to say.
Why wouldn't you just say that?
That's okay.
You don't have to call anybody out, but let's be real.
Yes. Sometimes you go and you're like, oh man, somebody pulled the short end, like the short straw at work, and they had to do this session that they didn't really want to do, or whatever it is. But if it's a session that I really liked, that I liked the person, that I liked the topic, that I felt like I learned something, in addition to making note of that, because I still remember people that I went to their sessions in 2020 and 2019, some of the first conferences that I went to, and I still go to their sessions to this day.
Yeah.
Ann Hanley.
Yep.
But I will make a note of if the person has a newsletter and if they have a book or multiple books. And a podcast, actually. I've started adding podcasts in there now too.
Yeah.
And when I go back through my conference notes for all the conferences that I've been to, I can see like, okay,
So-
these are books I'm adding to my TBR.
Who are three of your favorites?
Well, Anne Hanley, for
Right.
sure. I love Andrew Davis.
Give me
which
one more.
Just feels like such a plug.
He is awesome.
One more.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I have a new one from this. Can I give you a new one? Or does it have to be a repeat?
I mean, I didn't give you any criteria. So
well,
yeah.
okay. So I really liked at Content Marketing World this year. His session, the name he introduced himself at with the session was Joe Laser, but it's a shortened version of his. Oh my goodness,
Joe Laser.
Joe
What did he talk about?
Lazaskis, Joe Lazaskis, maybe, I don't know. He talked about the storytelling economy.
Huh.
And, but he was also he was very relatable. He was very clearly very knowledgeable. I liked the topic. I liked what he was talking about. He has a book that I'm definitely going to check out. And I immediately just like mentally put him on the list of like, if I see this name on a conference list, I will do my best to attend his session.
Yeah.
Like no matter what. Actually, and fourth one, you didn't ask for, but Tamsin Webster is on that list too. And I did go to her session.
See, if I'm anywhere where Jay Schwedelson is speaking about email, I will make sure I see his session because they're always super helpful and he's so funny.
Okay.
Anne Hanley's one of mine as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I really enjoyed watching Austin Church speak at CEX this year.
I missed that session and I'm really bummed about it. I had a conflict.
Justin Welsh
Oh, yes.
and Jay Klaus. Yeah.
Oh, you're right about, yes. Justin and Jay are both sessions that I've seen like several times.
Yeah.
And would go again. Also Joe. I've seen Joe talk several times.
Yeah. I didn't say Joe just because I've seen him talk a lot.
Yeah.
And oftentimes now I get the advantage of knowing what he's going to talk about ahead of time. But yeah, nonetheless, great stuff for sure.
Also,
I mean,
you're great too. I've never had a bad time at one of your sessions. I will say, if anyone has
that's because I'm usually stumbling through something.
well, no, I find them to be the opposite. No, if you're ever attending a conference and Matt is giving a session at it, I highly recommend going to it. And that's not a plug because I think you should go learn about why you should publish a book, or if you're already listening to this podcast, you're probably already interested. But I genuinely think that you are a very good speaker.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope you like cuss words if you come listen to me speak.
Yeah, we don't. There's none of that limitations that you have.
Do you remember that time at CEX that I was speaking and that lady stood up and it was time for questions, and she's like, "You don't look like your headshot. You're much grayer."
Yes.
And I didn't know. I was just standing there like, yeah, that's what working at Lulu will do. I mean, it's just like, are you kidding me? Wow. All right. But actually, to be fair to her, I guess my headshot was an older one where my beard wasn't quite as gray. It was like when I first started working at Lulu.
You didn't have the anchor tattoo either.
That's
so
true.
That might have been a surprise.
So I have switched to an updated headshot that is more reflective of my age and my time here in the publishing industry, which will definitely put some grays on you for sure. But thank you for those nice words.
You're welcome.
And it was interesting to hear who your top 4 or 5 were.
I mean, I could keep going, but
I'm sure we would. That's why I only
just
asked
the ones
for 3.
off the top of the head.
Yeah. I was just curious. I don't think I'd ever asked you that before.
No, that's fair.
Again, your notes, taking action on those notes, what you're going to do with them. Obviously, you want to chunk those things up. You know, it's a lot of stuff to go through. This is also, though, why I like having a tool. I can just tell it, go extract out the top 3, highlights of this session. What were the 3 most important things that the speaker touched on? I can determine whether or not I agree with those 3 things, and then I can take action on some of them if I want, if it applies to my business or whatever I'm doing. Or, if I'm at a fiction conference, I'm a writer or something like that, there may have been some things talked about that have to do with your favorite thing, tropes, or, plot development or characters or things like that. But again, the point is, finding some actionable takeaways from those notes. You want to find something you can put in place, again, that's going to help you in one way or another. I don't think you need to overthink it. You know what I mean? And again, if you can't easily pick out one or two things from your notes that you can put into action almost immediately, then maybe you didn't take good enough notes, or maybe you should find a different conference to go to next year.
Yeah.
But I would also say, look for some long-term things you can put in place too. I mean, a lot of people speak on things that are they're more long-term plays. It's going to take a little while. You put something in place, and you might not see the benefits from that really, or start reaping those benefits for 6 months to a year, sometimes longer. So, taking those notes and kind of chunking them up, and then saying, okay, these couple of things, this is low-hanging fruit. I can put those in place right now, whether that's a new tool you learned about, which is a lot more common these days, or some other type of way to potentially maybe craft social media content, or, a different way to do your newsletters to encourage more, forwards to get more signups in the end. Short-term things, but then also, what are some long-term things you can pull out of there? I think that's really important. So creating kind of an implementation strategy around those things, and then working on that throughout the year.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it, actually, is having that, short-term, medium-term, long-term strategy things to implement. I go to most of the conferences that I'm going to that aren't author events that we are exhibiting at are, social media or marketing or social media marketing conferences. Every conference that I have been to, whether it's been a social media marketing conference, or I think actually some of the publishing conferences that I've been to too, at least one person in one session has issued a challenge of, here is one thing you can try today. And honestly, try it. It's one thing, even if it doesn't fit into your content strategy, even if it's something that feels weird or out of sync for you, it feels good to capitalize on the inspiration and momentum that you get from attending these conferences. And that's a great opportunity to just say okay, somebody challenged me to make a 30-second reel today and post it on Instagram, and I'm going to do that. Okay, you can always delete it later if you decide you don't like it, just try it. But I think that's really important to have, that is to have those implementation ideas in your notes, and not just looking at those long-term, okay, when I write my next book, I'm going to try outlining it instead of just flying by the seat of my pants through it.
Try outlining it.
That's a pretty big change to implement, but finding small, actionable, and immediately actionable items that you can try, I think is absolutely worth it.
Yeah, you need those quick wins sometimes to keep you energized.
It's that dopamine hit, that instant gratification. Just remember, while you're doing that, as you are getting things from this conference, whatever you're taking out of it, don't try too many new things at once, because you won't be able to track the success of them.
For sure.
If you're implementing 5 changes to your website on the same day, you will not be able to tell which change had a positive or negative impact.
Yeah, or your social media channels, or whatever that might be. But yeah, absolutely. And again, that's why I think creating kind of an implementation strategy, again, what are the few things you want to try immediately being in the next 30 to 45 days, and space them out. And then what are some more long-term things that you want to try? And then, again, tracking them, like you said, and making sure that you're treating it as a true sort of experimentation of those concepts, to make sure that it does work. Because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
What are some other things we can do with these notes and this content from these?
Well, turn it into content that you can share.
On what?
Everywhere.
TikTok. I gave you the perfect opening to keep rubbing it in.
What if people don't want to use TikTok?
Well, apparently everybody does. That's what they told you back in March of 2020, and it was right.
Oh, well.
And well,
it was not wrong.
At the date of this episode, the government is still actively trying to shut it down, and I think they're probably going to have some success to a degree.
They have bigger fish to fry right now.
You would think.
Okay.
You would think.
It is October 28th of 2024. Don't they have bigger problems?
Listen, TikTok is the biggest problem. Mm-hmm. It's either a problem because you're spending all your money on it with TikTok Shop, or it's a problem because you're spending all of your attention on it. with
Guilty.
the funny videos of parents playing pranks on their kids, which are my favorite, or French Bulldog videos, which are my second favorite.
Of course they are.
Or it's a problem because, depending on who you believe, they're probably pumping all your information into the Chinese government.
Great.
As if these governments outside of the U.S. don't already have all our information anyways.
It's like when people say to me that like Disney is stealing your identity because they have photos, like
Take
they
it.
have
Take it.
right? Like first of all, take it.
Yeah.
Second of all, like you know who else has my photo ID?
Yep.
The government.
Yeah.
Like,
and newsflash, Disney's got your fingerprint as well as an ocular scan as well.
again, take it. They
That's
can
right.
have it.
Can I have a discount, Disney? Because you got all my biometrics, please. It's whatever. So yes, you're going to take this in the interest of time. We're going to move. You're going to take this content and you're going to turn it into social media content.
Yes.
Right. So,
But
everybody already struggles for new social media content, right? You feel like you're creating the same old crap, or you're not. Like me, you just give up and you don't post anything. You just lurk. Notes from sessions at these in-person events are great for social media content.
yeah, absolutely. They make great content there. And it's great content in two different ways because you're not just like, so two approaches to this. First of all, it's great content for you because it is helping you establish yourself as a thought leader to your audience. You know, you are an expert in something, you are attempting to establish that you are an expert in something to an audience of people, and you are doing that by delivering valuable information to them.
Yeah.
So, you know, probably all of your fans and followers that are interested in the type of content that you're speaking about were not able to go to this conference that you did. Chances are that your entire audience base was not also just at this conference. So you are able to impart valuable information on them by being able to say, hey, I just went to this conference. Here are 5 key takeaways that I got from it. Here are like 2 things that I want to try. Here's a book recommendation that I got that I'm really excited to read, or a person whose newsletter I signed up for, like whatever it is. This is an opportunity for you to share something with your audience that further establishes you as somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's a great way to, again, take this content, chop it up. If you're using a tool like we've talked about, like Otter or Ecamm or some of these others where it'll take the notes for you, it'll give you a transcription. Many of these tools like Otter, you can actually tell it, again, give me the top 5 highlights from this session, or give me the top 2 highlights from all 5 sessions that I attended. And then you turn that into social media content.
Yep.
And what you want to do is not just pass this off as your own information, by the way. We're not saying become a thought leader on the back of somebody else's hard work.
Right.
We're saying use that as an opportunity for you to come in as a commentator. So again, the content is, hey, here's one of the things I learned in this session by whatever, Jay Klaus, right? Jay was talking about social media and how sometimes it feels like you're screaming into the void. You know, here's my take on what he said. Here's how I see this playing out. And you can add into that and really make yourself a commentator on some of that stuff. Again, don't take somebody else's content and pass it off as yours. But the fact that you were there at this event, like you alluded to, that most of your audience probably did not go to and may not have even known about, they're living vicariously through you. Now they want to know, like, okay, well, what was so great about that event? What did you learn? What did this person talk about? And what did Anne Hanley wear this time? You know, or whatever.
The best suit. It was such a cool suit. She always wears cool suits.
The point is, I think that when you're talking about how to take this information and create social media content from it in a way that is, again, does justice to whoever you got the content from, but really helps you further position yourself as a thought leader or an expert on the subject, or at the very least, somebody trustworthy to bring that information back to your audience and show them how they can make use of it too. You can have this content stretch out for months and months after that event. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I love, session notes for this alone.
Yes. To add to that, one thing I'm going to add to that, again, like you're not establishing yourself on the backs of somebody else's work. You're also not going to share like verbatim, like do not just post a transcript from a session or a video from a session. The
whole thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like most conferences have specific rules against that. So
I need to find it. I don't remember if I took any video of that. If I do, I'll find it for you.
Please do.
I bet it's somewhere though.
Oh, I'm sure.
Clips.
Well, would you have access? I mean, a registered attendee, which again, another thing to remember for conferences that you're attending, if you're having a hard time taking notes, or if you want to go back and look for things that you can pull, many, if not all conferences these days will give you access as an attendee, will give you access to session recordings after the fact.
Yeah.
Which again, you are not going to post those publicly because they're not yours to turn around and say, hey, I'm going to send this to my entire email list. But you can absolutely go through that and say, like, I just rewatched this session and here are 3 notes that I pulled from it that I'm going to add my own commentary to. Oh my God, I just looked over and saw just a corner of a picture of your screen and I'm so jealous already. And obviously this is not just for social media content. You can also do this with your email newsletter. This can also be great email newsletter content as well. But also while Matt's pulling this up, I did say 2 different angles that you can approach this with, and 2 different ways that you can use repurposing event content as like an adding value to yourself. It's also a great way to network with the people that you are speaking about. So this is an opportunity for you to, if you're saying, I just attended Ann Hanley's incredible session and here are my like key takeaways from it, tag Ann Hanley in the post.
Yeah.
Like, she's a little busy. She might not get back to you, but some of the other people that you're going to tag in it, like this might have been their first time speaking, or this might have been their 5th time speaking, and they're still growing their network and they're still looking for like connections and validation from the people attending their sessions. And they might be really excited that you tagged them in it. And that might strike up a conversation that leads to a long-term connection with somebody newly added to your network.
Yeah. More importantly, that's just a staple of audience growth though too, is again, if you were going to make a post on whatever channel of choice, let's say it's LinkedIn, and you're going to talk about one of these concepts that you learned about in a session, and you're going to add your commentary and do your thing. And, of course you want to, at whoever the speaker was. Mm-hmm. And of course you want to at a few other people that might've been involved, because to your point, you never know when one of them will actually respond and or repost it. And that's one of the best ways to grow your audience and grow your follower counts too, from credible, non-bot human beings that you can then also hopefully get them over to, again, an owned channel like your newsletter or something like that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Networking alone is probably, one of the other main benefits of an in-person conference, right?
Yes.
Even for an introvert like me, potentially you, there's networking that happens where I may have come away from an event where maybe I didn't come away with notes that led to anything actionable in such a way where it moved the needle incrementally for revenue, but I may have come away with an introduction to somebody or somebody I met where 6 months later we were able to work together on something that did turn into something revenue producing. Yep. Or, an acquisition or something like that. Like, you just never know. So again, remaining open to not only the information you're taking in those sessions, but also the people that you might meet and come across at these events is almost invaluable.
I watched this play out firsthand this year, where we went to a conference in January that was a podcast conference that Lou Mangello was one of the speakers at it. And then, we spoke with him very briefly there. And then a few months later, he was actually at CEX, which is our conference, and, reconnected with him there and talked to him there. And then a few months after that, Matt wound up being a speaker at his conference, and that, like, it was like a very,
yes,
like people that literally only interacted with each other, like by way of crossing paths at conferences several times, and went from not knowing each other to like attending and speaking at respective conferences.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Let's summarize and wrap it up for everybody.
All right. Well, you summarize.
Okay.
Turn your Otter AI on and have it summarize.
I should have had that thing running this whole time.
By the way, this episode is not sponsored by Otter AI.
No. And we are recording this episode using Ecamm.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Which is also not a sponsor.
No, but we love Ecamm.
We do.
Yeah. They're a sponsor of CEX.
That's true.
Yeah.
But they're not sponsoring this episode. We paid for this subscription.
That's true. We happily paid for this subscription.
We did.
Yeah. By the way, Katie from Ecamm, I met at Momentum, Lou Mangello's event, where I spoke after meeting Lou at Podfest and CEX.
Yep.
Yeah, see?
See, it all goes together.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or separation or whatever you call it. There you go.
Both of them.
Yeah. All right. Getting ROI out of your in-person events again, just to wrap it up. Take good notes. That's the whole point. You're there is to get information, to bank some new knowledge, to come away with some actionable takeaways to help you grow your business, help further position you as a thought leader. Some of those things. What we talked about was, not everybody's a great note taker, or sometimes you're doing this whole pre-filter thing where you're not taking in everything because you're only taking notes on what you think will help you or what you could use. Using tools like Otter AI or Ecamm or some of these other tools where they can take the notes for you and then go a step further afterwards and potentially not only summarize those notes, but help you pull out the highlights and the most actionable takeaways. So really important to make sure that you're set up for success with your note taking out of the gate, or you have a friend that's with you or a coworker that's really good at taking notes. Doesn't really matter, but you got to have those for the rest of this to even work. Secondarily, again, taking those notes and turning those into actionable takeaways, pulling those out, a couple of like low-hanging fruit. I can do some of these things now and really test the return on them. And then maybe some long-term things too that you can put in place that you'll be able to see the benefits from 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, year and a half down the road. And then lastly, taking those notes and some of those actionable takeaways that you've tried to put in place and work around and creating social media content from that, again, to help further you as an expert, as a thought leader, really just to share kind of your experiences with your audience, and really hope that they're able to see the value in that and see you as a thought leader and help you continue growing that audience, right?
That was an incredibly impressive summary. I can't believe you remembered everything that we just talked about for the last hour.
Because I wasn't busy taking notes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Schooled. Okay.
Now, if you asked me what I had for lunch yesterday, I couldn't tell you.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's fair. I couldn't either, honestly. But
anything you want to add to that?
No, actually, although I do really like this example that we just provided of, when in doubt, buddy up at conferences and have one person be the note taker and one person be the
it's like the designated driver, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But which one of us is the designated driver in this scenario? The note taker or the person that's not taking notes and paying attention?
The note taker.
I think you're right.
That's the point.
The more responsible one.
That's right. Yeah. That's the best friend to have is somebody who takes good notes.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And then you can always just borrow mine. But you can't copy off me for the exam. I'm not that kind of nerd.
Shameless plug, CEX, Content Entrepreneur Expo is our event. It's an amazing event. New dates are set, August 24th through the 26th of 2025.
I'm so excited.
Lauren's favorite, Ann Hanley, was this year at CEX. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we'll see her in 2025 there, as well as Andrew Davis and lots of other greats. So if any of this episode resonates with you and you would like to learn some really cool stuff, and you're ready to try out your note-taking skills, hopefully we'll see you in August.
Yeah. Yeah. And until then, I think by the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be too late for anyone to join us at Author Nation. But,
yeah,
we've already got some 2025 conferences lined up. I'm sure there will be more that we hear about, learn about, people get excited about. So if you have any conferences that you're attending in 2025 that you think we should know about, that you think are going to be really cool, that are excited about, let us know. We always love learning about new events.
Don't send over like Taylor Fest 2025 or something like that, or When We Were Elder Emos 2025.
Sorry, next year is Warped Tour returning, don't you know?
Oh, my God.
There's going to be one in Orlando, and it took a lot of self-restraint to not buy a ticket. Because Disney and Warped Tour at the same time, I would have simply keeled over dead.
I don't even like the fact that you just put those two in the same breath of air.
I have nothing to say to that.
You should get your annual pass holder revoked.
I haven't bought it yet. So.
Oh, you should not get one because of that.
Well, that's just not going to happen. Sorry.
Lou, pull some strings, buddy.
Get me blacklisted?
That's right. Lauren Vassallo, no annual pass holder status. Talk to your people.
I literally would rather you fire me.
I'm just kidding. Lou doesn't even listen to this podcast.
I know, but genuinely, I would rather you fire me than get me blacklisted from Disney. So
yeah, same.
Yeah.
All right.
So no threats.
Nope.
We're just going to move on.
Yep.
Thanks for listening, everyone. As always, You can find us on Lulu Social. You can email us at podcast@lulu.com. Ask questions. Let us know what you thought about whatever just happened in this episode. I don't know. Let us know what conferences you're attending to. And if you do hear this right before you're heading to Author Nation, make sure that you stop by the Lulu booth and say hi, because we would love to see you.
And we'll have all the best swag.
And friendship bracelets.
And that.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Later.
To learn more about this episode, check out the show notes on publishprosperpodcast.com. Publish and Prosper is brought to you by Lulu.com. To hear more episodes like this one, please like and subscribe wherever you listen. Thanks for tuning in.